So recently I started this journey where I've been trying to make sacrifice more of a daily part of my life. And so I went on this quest to try and figure out why sacrifice is even worth pursuing. And a lot of the things I found out were super interesting. And I want to share what I learned with you. So when I thought about sacrificing every day, my mind immediately went to a definition I learned in seminary, that sacrifice is giving something up for something better. And the classic example they used in my seminary, it was an early morning seminary, was that you are sacrificing your sleep, giving up some of your sleep so that you can learn more about God. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I recently just completed a challenge where I was trying to serve more. I was trying to make service more a part of my daily life. And service and sacrifice, I have found, are so different from each other. Because service is this really feel-good thing, an outcrop of all the love you feel for other people. It just pours out and it's something you do for other people. But sacrifice is something you have to give up. It's hard, right? And so it has been a challenge. I don't know that I'm good at it, and I am trying, but I'm glad to learn all of these things. It's really helped me get a different perspective on sacrifice than I had before. So they have done research on sacrifice and have found it to be beneficial. And here's some of the reasons they have found that sacrifice helps you. Sacrifice creates a sense of meaning and purpose. Sacrifice can strengthen your relationships, because oftentimes when you're sacrificing for those that you love. Sacrifice builds self-control and confidence. It says when you sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term goals, you think about stuff like studying instead of going out or exercise instead of resting, you experience growth and self-discipline. It also boosts your self-esteem. And it increases positive emotions. It says sacrificing for others for a purpose often leads to a helper's high. Acts of generosity activate the reward pathways in your brain, and you feel more connected, appreciated, and valued. So regardless of how you feel religiously, trying to sacrifice for those that you love or for things that are important to you, it is going to be beneficial to you in the long run. But how exactly do you go about sacrificing? Some of the research I did was super interesting between what is considered a sacrifice and what things you're doing just because somebody expects it of you. It's some kind of inherited expectation that you have. So there are signs that you can tell if what you're doing is a true sacrifice or it's something you're doing just because others expect it of you. Because when you're acting out of expectations, you're going to be doing things just because somebody else wants you to do that. And you're going to be afraid of what others would say if you don't do it. But true sacrifice should be a willing choice that you make. So I found this framework super helpful in helping me analyze some of the choices I've made in my life, some of the things I consider sacrifices, and understanding why I'm making the choices that I'm making. So if you feel guilty, anxious, or wrong for saying no, even if the request is unreasonable, that often points to inherited expectations. Guilt is often a sign that sacrifice was taught and not chosen. But I think none of us are perfect, and oftentimes we are making sacrifices that we know are important and we want to choose it, but maybe we're not choosing it right now. And so I also found this framework. This is from President Dallin H. He talks about some of the motives for why we make the choices we do. Here's 6 reasons you might be making the decisions you're making. For earthly reward, for riches or honor, for good companionship. And this is like a hierarchy, right? These are base level reasons you might be doing something, and you're going to move up to the very best reason why you're doing something. So earthly reward, good companionship. The third one is out of fear or punishment. And that's what we're talking about with inherited expectations, right? A sense of duty or loyalty that also can lead into you're doing it because you're expected to. But then above that is because of a hope for an eternal reward, a spiritual reward. And even above that is because you're doing these things because you have a pure love for God and others, because of charity. And so that obviously is the best reason to make the decision to sacrifice. And so even though maybe you're not making exactly the sacrifice for all the right reasons, I don't think that's a reason to stop sacrificing. But I do think evaluating why you're making the choices you're making is going to be really helpful to you to figure out if this is something you should continue or maybe change how you're doing things. So one of the questions that you can ask yourself is, if no one knew I did this, would I still do it? So if the answer is yes, then it aligns with your personal values. It's a choice that you're making. But if the answer is no, then that's an expectation that you're just trying to uphold. So this harkens back to what I was talking about earlier, how they have found that sacrifice has been shown to positively impact your life. So they say a chosen sacrifice is going to give you something back It's going to give you meaning. It's going to give you pride, connection, purpose. All of these things you're going to feel if you've chosen to make a sacrifice over an inherited expectation is going to take more than it returns. So you're going to feel exhausted, resentment, invisibility, and burnout. And does that make you start to think about some of these things that maybe you've labeled as a sacrifice that maybe was an expectation? I have an example from my life. So I talked about in a previous video, we made the sacrifice of taking some time the last month to clean the church each week. And 2 Saturdays ago, I was just not in the mood. I didn't want to clean it. There was a blizzard going on, and my husband was like, hey, we need to go clean the church. And I was just like, I don't think we should go. It's kind of snowy and dangerous, and we don't need to this week. But we did eventually go, and my heart was softened over time as we were cleaning the church. I felt differently by the end, and I was like, I'm really glad we did this. This was a good choice for our family. But the next day, we were going to have a meal at the church, and I had prayed in the morning, and I asked the Father, I said, what can I do to sacrifice today? And he said, I need your help cleaning the church after everyone has eaten. And my attitude was completely different because this time I had chosen it. I wanted to do it, and I knew it was something it was going to do to serve the Lord. And I felt all of those things. I felt proud of myself. I felt meaning and purpose. I felt like I was doing something that needed to get done. And so, like I said, you don't always have the perfect reason for doing something, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? The church still needed to be cleaned, even though I wasn't willing to sacrifice at that point. But when you do it with the correct intention, when you choose to sacrifice, you're going to have a way better experience than if you're just doing things out of expectations. So another question I had is I wanted to know, is it still a sacrifice if it doesn't feel like a sacrifice? And I felt like the things I learned about this were also super helpful. So you can get used to a sacrifice, but that doesn't erase the cost. Remember the definition of a sacrifice, giving something up for something better. So when you sacrifice something regularly, it's going to build resilience and your tolerance is going to increase. Your perspective is going to shift and your identity is going to incorporate the behavior that you're doing. So even though the feeling of sacrificing something is going to fade, you're still ultimately giving something up for something better. So I certainly had this happen to me when I've been trying to incorporate habits, right? There's a lot of sacrifice involved with starting a habit, doing things differently, and eventually it gets to the point where it's not hard to wake up early. You're used to training hard, or you're used to putting others before yourself. But I believe it's a lie of Satan to convince yourself that just because now it's easy, it's no longer a sacrifice. Because when you see what you're doing to sacrifice for others and to make your life better and to make others' lives better, that helps you feel proud of yourself. And that's important. That helps you have the momentum to keep going and to make better choices. But sacrifice shouldn't always hurt. If sacrifice always hurts, that's going to lead to burnout. That may signal you have some kind of imbalance in your life, and it might mean that you have weak boundaries. So healthy sacrifice is intentional, meaningful, and sustainable. It's something that you're choosing to do, not wondering what other people are thinking, not feeling resentful and mad at others because they're not helping you. And I thought this was really helpful when you think about sacrifice in your family, right? This has certainly happened to me a million times where you are sacrificing something, but you're mad at everyone else because you have to sacrifice. Or it also happens sometimes in church settings where you are sacrificing a lot, but you're frustrated with everyone else in the congregation because they're not helping you. So the best kind of sacrifice is the kind that you are choosing, and you're not thinking about what everyone else is doing because it's all about you and your heart and what you want to give. So it's been really helpful for me to pray each morning to ask the Lord to help me sacrifice. And I have found this prayer is harder than the prayer about what I should serve, what kind of service I can do each day, because it means something hard, right? Something you have to give up, something you don't want to do. And I have found that I have to be in a really humble place when I'm willing to ask this. Because the answer might be something that I am not initially drawn to, but then the power comes when you choose it, when you say, yes, this is something that I want to sacrifice for my love of my Savior, the ultimate, highest reason you can do something for others. So I am certainly not an expert on trying to sacrifice daily, but I would love it if you wanted to join me in trying to find ways to sacrifice each day. If you have found some cool ways to sacrifice, I'd love to hear in the comments. And as far as my end goes, I'm going to try and share the things that I have been trying to sacrifice with you. Hopefully we can inspire each other to have ideas on how we can make sacrifice more of a daily part of our lives. Something that's going to give us purpose and meaning, something that's going to strengthen our relationships, something that's going to build self-control and confidence, and something that increases the positive emotions you feel in your life. So hopefully I'll have an update on that next week sometime. And be sure to check back because I can't wait to share more of what I've been learning with you, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!